On behalf of Victoria Memorial Hall and the Pickle Factory Dance Foundation, I welcome you all to this evening's event, which is a conversation. Before we start with the conversation, something that struck me is we often talk about lost in translation. It's a very popular term. But what we are talking about today is a typical case of something that is lost in transliteration. Because you go and see there outside, it's written Kattai, Kuttu, yeah? And naturally, the automatic tendency would be to say Kattaikkuttu, yeah? But actually, what we are going to talk about today is Kattaikkuttu, yeah? And Kuttu in Tamil, in transliteration, gets transferred to something else, And Kuttu is somewhat the equivalent of Jatra or Tamasha, as you would call in Maharashtra. So that is the form about which we are going to talk today. And my mind races back also to younger days when there used to be hoardings of Hindi Bollywood films. And sometimes there was a hoarding which said Pati, and then the next word was Patni. And whoever is of Tamil background will read it as Party Patni, yeah, which means grandmother is starving, yeah, but actually it was Pati Patni, yeah, which is husband and wife. So in transliteration also we lose a lot of things, and sometimes it is important that we know what it is in the original too, which is why I wanted to mention this over here. Before we get on to the actual conversation, I would like to invite Vikram Iyengar of Pickle Factory Dance Foundation here, because this evening has been organized as part of the program Spaces for Dialogue initiated by Pickle Factory. So Vikram will put this event of this evening in that context as to how this fits in that program that they have initiated. And of course, the conversation is going to be between Perangattur P.Rajagopal and Hann de Bruin, who will be in conversation with Rustom Bharucha. I would like to request Vikram to say a few words about the contextualization and also in 2 or 3 lines introduce the protagonists for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Raman. It's always a pleasure to work with you in particular and have all these lovely introductions, which we don't sort of necessarily see. So I'm Vikram Iyengar of the Pickle Factory Dance Foundation, and the Spaces for Dialogue segment that we are presenting in December is part of a longer Pickle Factory season that goes from November right through to February, divided into 4 parts each month, and the December segment is called Spaces for Dialogue. And we are looking basically at what are the questions, what are the debates, what are the issues that performing arts, not just the form and content themselves, but the socio-political context of the artist, of the art form, what are the questions that these throw up, what are the things that we can be discussing about them, and how does that impact our understanding of ourselves, of our perceptions? How do we then start questioning what we think, how we think, what we think about, and how we see other people? So this particular Spaces for Dialogue segment has been designed loosely around the question, how do we perceive or understand familiar bodies? So the familiar, this tension between the familiar and the unfamiliar that we all face in every day, how do we negotiate that? And how do we look at performance and where it's coming from through a more maybe democratic lens, which allows us to actually interact with many more kinds of performances, many more kinds of art forms, looking at it from the point of view of the context that they come from, rather than imposing our understanding on them. So that goes back to transliteration in a sense, that how do we look at Kuttu from Kuttu rather than look at Kuttu from the outside. And I'm delighted that we are able to have this conversation between Rajagopal and Hannah and Rustom I think very, very briefly, Rajagopal and Hann de Bruin have 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, started the Kattaikkuttu Sangam, which was one of the first, and still, correct me if I'm wrong, still the only institution that trains young girls in the tradition, because like many traditions in India, it was only for men. And this change has, I mean, they will talk about this, so I'm not going to say too much about it. The exhibition outside also gives you an entry point into the groundbreaking work that they have done in taking the tradition as the tradition somewhere else. Often we think of traditions, oh, this is to be kept here, and to go somewhere else we need to be looking at non-tradition. But traditions can inspire us and take us places if we allow ourselves that liberty. And I think this is one great story that we all should know. So I'm delighted to have them with us, and they will also be performing as part of the season. There's information here for you to look at the end of the evening, and we'd be very delighted if you came to see them actually perform, not just to hear them speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vikram, for contextualizing the whole thing in such a beautiful manner. So may I request Rustom to kindly take his seat here in the middle over there and be flanked by Hann and Rajagopal. And you can choose whether you want to be on his right or on his left.
This is better for
depending on your political inclinations.
Oh dear. Is this okay for you?
ওই মাইক্রোফোনটাকে অন করে দিন, ওই কর্ডলেসটাকে,
On আছে?
আর অন্য দুটো মাইক্রোফোন অন আছে তো? Okay. So Rustom, kindly take over.
Thank you.
And at the end of the conversation, I'm sure
It's a Q&A,
you would be
yeah.
ready to take some
Discussion.
comments and questions from the audience if they have any. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, thanks to all of you for coming to attend this discussion. My gratitude to Victoria Memorial, to Joyanto Sengupta, to Raju Raman, whom I have known for many years, but the first time I've been hearing Raman speak in his mother tongue, in Tamil, with Rajagopal, and that was very, very startling and lovely. And Victoria Memorial is doing great work. For those of you who haven't seen the exhibition installation of Madhuja Mukherjee, which is on the canal of India, of Calcutta, sorry. It's a canal that we don't even know exists in our own city, you know, Tolly Canal or whatever, and it goes through many, many nooks and corners. It's a deeply, deeply affecting installation, and I hope that you'll be able to catch it. There's one day left on Sunday. It's very moving. And we also have another exhibition done by this extraordinary feminist queer collective, Calcutta-based Shomoho. And they have had an interaction with Kattaikkuttu Sangam, and I was instrumental in introducing them, but beyond that, you can see this exhibition is so intimate and so genuine in its interaction. You know, we don't have many interactions across the different regions of our country. So from a rural area of Tamil Nadu and Bengal here, in two very different contexts, it's a beautiful exhibition. So it gives me great pleasure to have beautifully done. And we'll come back to Shomo at the end of the discussion so we can link things. So I'm flanked by Rajagopal and Hann, as I know them. And we've known each other for many, many years. And we've had many, many conversations, especially with Hann, long distance conversations. But we've never had a conversation in public. And when you have a conversation in public, it's somewhat different. And so I'm going to take you through their journey, because their journey is quite special. So Hannah, I think you were the one who started the journey in a way, because here you are, you were growing up and doing your doctorate in Holland, and you landed up in Tamil Nadu. So how did that happen?
Well, Rustom, that was a not so academic love story. And many people have been asking us, and I always tell them, please don't ask about our relationship, but what we do. So that will be my answer here also. But yeah, Rajagopal has been instrumental in me getting to know Kutte, or Kattaikkuttu. And there's somewhat of a problem with the transliteration, that's correct. But I came to Tamil Nadu actually to learn the language, because you know, when you study Tamil in the Netherlands, you learn a very literary kind of Tamil, which is of no use when you land on Tamil Bhumi. People speak an entirely different language, which I had never been taught at university. So I got a scholarship from the Indian government for 2 years, but again, Tamil University started teaching me. It's not on.
It's on.
Yeah.
Just increase
I'm
the
audible?
volume. Yeah,
Okay, I'm too.
you have to speak into it.
Yes. Tamil University again, they started me out on learning Sangam literature. And my idea was, why did I opt as a trained Indologist for Tamil? Because I wanted to learn a living language in India. So then I moved out with the kind of little money I had and went to live in Vellore. And that is actually there. I did a very brief kind of research on health education in a leprosy hospital. And as you know, most of these leprosy hospitals are Christian or missionary institutions. So the health education kind of fluidly went over into kind of conversion talk. And when I looked at the health education, nobody understood what it was about. They were showing, for instance, slides of the first symptoms of leprosy, so a patch on the arm. But as the hand was missing and the upper part, people in the patients were unable to read that this was an arm. Because that visual kind of literacy was not there. And also, they felt they had to kind of become Christian in order to get access to treatment. So it was not clear at all where this health education stood. And that made me think about what would be a different medium that you could communicate in. And that is how, as an Indologist, I ended up in theater. Wow. And that is where I met, in the end, also our very first performance has been on the issue of leprosy. Actually, a story, Nalayani Saritiram, where the main character gets leprosy and is cured of it in the end. It's a famous story. It's not a very woman-friendly story at all. But this is how we met and how I got interested in this kind of incredible
theater form. This is quite a journey from Indology. When you think of Indology, it's all about Sanskrit and about the classical traditions. But when we are dealing with Kattaikkuttu, it's absolutely grassroots, rural kind of context where you're reaching out to people primarily in villages with all-night performances. It's a different context. So Rajagopal, when she came to your part of the world, I don't want to go into the romance. We can draw the curtain there, but the parda. But what did anyone prior to Hannah work with you from abroad? Yes. On your tradition? Yeah. Or was she the first person that you were?
First 1982 Karnataka na perform பண்ணும்போது அப்போ ரிச்சர்ட் ஃப்ராஸ்காவுக்கு நான் முதல்ல பிஹெச்டி உதவி பண்ணேன் கூத்து. அப்போது ஒரு ப்ரோக்ராம் கேட்டாங்க கர்நாடகா ஸ்கூலில். அப்போது நான் ஒரு பெர்ஃபார்ம் பண்ணேன், திரௌபதி வர்ஷாபரணம். அப்போது தான் போயிட்டு இத்தாலி ப்ரொஃபஸர் மரோத்தி பார்த்துட்டு எங்கள் கம்பெனியை, அப்போ சங்கம் கிடையாது, பெருமட்டு பொன்னுசாமி வாத்தியார் கம்பெனி அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு தான் நடத்திட்டு இருந்தேன். அப்போது போயிட்டு வந்தது. அவருக்கு நான் வந்து ரிச்சர்ட் ஃப்ராஸ்காவுக்கு நான் ஃபஸ்ட்டு இது பண்ணியிருக்கேன். அவரு கூத்து PhD பண்ணி டாக்டரேட் வாங்கியிருக்காரு. ரெண்டாவது தான் 87 I met Anna.
He first helped Richard Fraska with his PhD, and through him he traveled with his own company. That was at a time that the Sangam did not exist, and Rajagopal was running his own company to Italy, where they did a series of performances.
Okay. So tell me, Rajagopal, you grew up, you use the word company, so you had a theatre company,
Yes.
right? Could you tell us something about the history of that theatre company? Because I think your father, who was also your guru at some level,
Yes.
was...
Father, my grandfather,
Okay.
also actor and guru.
Yes.
I know. Then when I was young, then I saw my father company, the small role, the Krishna roles,
Yeah.
and Sagadevan. Krishna role means the only statue, இந்த பக்த சேதான
Statue.
கூத்துல சும்மா சிலைக்கு சாப்பாடு ஊட்டுற மாதிரி இது நைவேத்தியம் ஊட்டுவாங்க. அந்த வேஷம் போட்டு நிற்க வச்சாங்க, பொம்மை மாதிரி, ஒரு சிலை மாதிரி, அவ்வளோதான்.
So
அப்படியே அதுலேருந்து அப்புறம்
he had to stand as a statue on the stage. That was
So,
his first
அப்படியே
role as
அந்த
Krishna.
அதுதான் என்னுடைய ஆர்வமே. அதுலேருந்து கூத்துக்கு தான் போகணும்னு இருந்ததுனால சரியாக படிக்க போகிறதில்ல. படிக்கவும் போகணும். அது அம்பரி தாம்பலம் கொடுக்குறவங்களும் வந்து ராஜகோபால் வந்தால் தான் பொன்சாமி உன் பையனை கூப்பிட்டு வந்துரு கூத்துக்கு அப்படி. நான் எங்கே போய் படிக்கிறது? அதுக்கப்புறம் தினமும் கூத்தாடிட்டு அப்பா என்ன பண்ணு, கூத்து முடிஞ்ச உடனே ஸ்கூல் போனால் அங்கே போகிறதில்ல. போன உடனே வாத்தியாரும் பவுடர்லாம் பார்த்துட்டு கொஞ்சம் கூத்தாட்டு வந்தியா போய் படுத்துக்க அப்படின்னு விடுவார். என் ஸ்கூல்லேயே எனக்கு ஒரு சப்போர்ட் இருந்தது. என்னன்னு கேட்டிங்கன்னா தூங்கத்துக்கு இடம் விட்டாங்க.
So he says that from that moment onwards he knew already that he wanted to be a performer, but his father felt he also had to study. But as it came to performances in villages, the audience was asking for Rajagopal, please bring your son to perform. So this was a great ambivalence in this going to school or performing. And even at school, when he came back after an all-night performance, the teachers were aware of the fact that he had been performing, and they were giving him space to sleep.
Wow. That's very good.
அதனால தான் அந்த 6வது 6th ஸ்டாண்டர்டோட படித்து முடிச்சுட்டு அதுக்கப்புறம் 10 வயசில் இதுக்கு மேலே நாங்கள் ஸ்கூல் போக முடியாது.
So that's why he kind of closed his education with 6th standard.
Okay. How did your father teach you, Rajagopal, the songs of the tradition and other literature? Because you've read a lot of Tamil literature.
Yes.
Yeah? So it was self-taught, or how did it happen? Listening.
ஆமாம். ஆனால் ஃபஸ்ட்டு முதல்ல வந்து அவர் சின்ன வயசில் ஹார்மோனியம் கொஞ்சம் உட்காந்து சொல்லி கொடுத்தாரு. அதுக்கப்புறம் பிரகலாத வேஷம் சொல்லி கொடுத்தாரு.
So first he had to learn the harmonium from his father, and then Prahlada Vesham, which is a notoriously difficult role. Maybe you can illustrate what it was. Prahlada Vesham.
வேஷம் தான் ஆடணும் அப்படின்ட்டு என்னுடைய ஆசை. அவருக்கு வந்து ஹார்மோனியம் தெரிஞ்சுக்கிட்டா தான் நீ பாடுறதுக்கும் தேவை, கூத்துக்கு வந்து பாடம் தெரிஞ்சுக்கணும் அப்படின்னு சொன்னார்.
For Kuttu you need to be able to sing well, so you need to learn the harmonium.
அதுக்கப்புறம் ஒரு வார்த்தை என்ன சொன்னார்னா, கூத்தாடியோ பார்த்து மொத்தம் பின்பாட்டு பாடியே கற்றுக்கோ அப்படின்னு.
And then learn the trade through singing in the chorus, pinpaatu.
Okay.
ஸோ அதனால தான் நான் சின்ன வயசுலேயே படிக்காமல் வந்ததுனால நான் இந்த 87 இதெல்லாம் போனங்க யக்ஷகானெல்லாம் பார்த்த பிறகு நம்ம தமிழ்நாட்டில் ஒரு எனக்கு வந்த மாதிரி இருக்கக்கூடாது, மற்ற பிள்ளைங்களுக்கு இந்த கூத்து கலைஞர்களுக்கு சின்ன பிள்ளைலேருந்து கற்றுக்கணும், அதே நேரத்தில் படிப்பு இருக்கணும், கலையும் கல்வியும் ஒரு இடத்தில் இருக்கணும்னு தான் இந்த குருகுலம் ஆரம்பித்தேன்.
And this is the principal reason why he started the Gurukulam, because children should not be without education when they want to become a performer, an actor. They should be under the same roof. So that is the dream of the Gurukulam.
அப்படி கற்றுக்கிட்டேன். நீங்கள் கேட்ட கேள்விக்கு, அதாவது எப்படி இதை நீங்கள் வந்து தமிழ் இந்த அளவுக்கு இது பண்ணுறீங்கன்னு சொன்னது அப்படியே பிக்கப் பண்ணது பெரியவங்க பாடினது அர்ஜுன் தபசு தேவாரம் அதெல்லாம் அது தேவாரமா திருத்தாண்டகமா திருப்புகழா அப்படின்னு கூட தெரியாது. அவங்க பாடுறத அப்படியே பின்னால் பாடி கற்றுக்கிட்டது தான்.
But your question as to how do you know this Tamil literature is from listening to others, senior performers, without very often knowing what that part of literature is, but being able to reproduce it as they sang it.
Okay.
Devaram, whatever.
This was a hard life, like many performances night after night after night.
Hard life, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. ஃபார் எக்ஸாம்பிள் இப்போ கூட நான் நடந்து வரும்போது பாடிக்கிட்டே வர்றேன். அப்போ எனக்கு அந்த வலி தெரியல. இப்போ எல்லோரும் பார்க்கும்போது ஆடியன்ஸை பார்க்கும்போது எனக்கு வலி தெரியாது. எல்லாத்தையும் கை உடைஞ்சாலும் கால் உடைஞ்சாலும் போனாலும்
when he sees the audience he forgets about pain. And joints not working.
Okay, I'm going to talk on a slightly political issue, and it directly concerns the naming of your particular tradition, because if you learn about this tradition in history books that circulate, not very good ones, the word that we generally hear is Kattaikkuttu. You know, that's the word that circulates. Kattaikkuttu meaning a kind of street drama. And you use a very different word. You use the word Kattaikkuttu very, very consciously, and as we know, very politically. Yes. Okay, and there's still a lot of tension between your use of the word and many city people, Chennai-based people, who want to still use the word Kattaikkuttu. Now, I know that there's a very real story, because the person who made that change was your father. It didn't come from you, it came from your father. Yeah. So there was a story there. There's a very personal story that I wish you could share, because it's part of our history that we don't really talk about. Okay. What happened? When did he make that shift?
கூத்து வந்து my father டைமில் சின்ன பொழுதுல எல்லாமே அது நாடகம் தான் சொல்லுவாங்க. கூத்து நாடகம். இன்னொரு வார்த்தை என்னன்னு கேட்டிங்கன்னா ஆட்டம். ஆட்டக்காரர் வந்துட்டாங்களா அப்படின்னு தான் வில்லேஜில் கேட்பாங்க. இன்னொரு விஷயம், நம்ம வட்டார வழக்குன்னு தமிழில் சொல்கிறது உண்டு. அது முதல்ல இங்கே காஞ்சிபுரம் செய்யார், அது திருவண்ணாமலை மாவட்டம், பெருங்குட்டூர் சொந்த ஊர் வந்து திருவண்ணாமலை மாவட்டம். அங்கே வந்து ரெண்டு அதாவது ட்ராமா, ஆனால் சொன்ன மாதிரி முன்ன பேசுனாங்க மாதிரி ட்ராமா கட்டைக்கூத்து அப்படின்றது இருக்குது. கூத்து
in that area where we are from, there are two different genres of performance. One is Kutta and the other is a form they call drama. The English word drama.
Drama சொல்றது என்னன்னு கேட்டிங்கன்னா, இந்த ஸ்டேஜ் போட்டு அவங்க சினிமா ஸ்டைலில் இந்த ட்ரெஸ் மட்டும்தான் போட்டு ஆடுவாங்க. அதில் இந்த திரை பிடிக்கிறது, இந்த கட்டை வேஷம்லாம் கிடையாது. இந்த கட்டைக்கூத்து அப்படின்றதுக்கு ஏன் பேர் வச்சதுன்னா, அதில் பேர் வச்ச பிறகு தான் தெரியுது. ஆனால் கிராமத்தில் பேசும்போது அது எதோ ஒன்றா சொன்னாங்க. கூத்தாடி வந்துட்டாங்களான்னு கேட்பாங்க, ஆட்டக்காரர் வந்துட்டாங்கன்னு கேட்பாங்க. இது கேட்குறதுக்கு முன்னாடி இன்னொரு விஷயம் என்னென்னா, திருவிழா ஜாத்திரை பண்ணுவோம். 2 வருஷத்தில் ஆடி மாதம் ஜாத்திரை, தை மாசி பங்குனி சித்திரையெல்லாம் அடுத்த சிவன் கோயில், முருகன் கோயில், திரௌபதம் கோயில், இதுக்கெல்லாம் திருவிழா பண்ணுவாங்க. ஆடி மாதம் மாரியம்மன் திருவிழா, அதுக்கு தான் ஜாத்திரைன்னு சொல்கிறது.
So in these northern parts of Tamil Nadu, bordering Andhra, there are special festivals for Mariamman, and these are called Jatra, not festival. They're called Jatri. Where the deity is represented by a karaham, not as a statue.
Mariamman Jatra.
Yeah, Mariamman Jatra. That's very specific for the region.
அந்த மாரியம் ஜாத்திரைக்கு தாம்பலம் கொடுக்கறதுக்கு யாருக்குன்னு அந்த கிராமத்தில் முதல்ல பேசும்போதே ட்ராமாவாக கட்டுறதுன்னா, ஜாத்திரைக்கு எப்போவுமே கூத்து தான் வைக்கணும்.
For Jatra you have to commission கூத்து.
கிராமத்தில் பேசும்போது தெருக்கூத்து கட்டைக்கூத்து பேச மாட்டாங்க. அப்போ நாடகம், நாடகக்கார் சொல்லுவாங்க, எதோ சொல்லுவாங்க. அப்போ யாரும் நேம் போர்டெலாம் போடுறதில்ல.
Yeah, but I'm talking about that incident where your father...
Yes. My father told only நாடகம். That time they can they perform the nadagam also, Kuttu also. Kuttu nadagam means we call the Nalayani, Harichandra, Pavalakodi, Alli Arjuna, Pururu Chakravarti, Nala Chakravarti. In the Kuttula aadumbodu only dress pottu dhaan aadnaanga.
Okay, so Hannah, you have been a very vocal critic on the politics of naming, and I think the question hasn't been fully addressed yet. That there was a very conscious decision and a very real action which took place in the pre-performance rituals of one of the performances, and if you could just elaborate on that and your own very real reservations as a critic of how this word Kattaikkuttu is used and how it has been circulated.
So Rajagopal's story, to cut the story short, is that a Kattaikkuttu god commissioned. And the Tirukuttu then is a processional part, is a mobile performance. They are part of the procession of the Jatre of Mariamman.
இல்லை அதுதான் சொல்ல வரேன். அந்த மாரியம்மன் ஜாத்திரைக்கு தாம்பலம் கொடுக்க வரும்போது அதான் சொன்னேன் நான். தாம்பலம் கொடுக்கும்போதே பேசுகிறாங்க கூத்துக்கு தான் கொடுக்கணும். கூத்துக்குன்னு தாம்பலம் கொடுக்க வரும்போது 3 நாளைக்கு சேர்த்து தாம்பலம் கொடுப்பாங்க. முதல் நாள் காப்பு கட்டுறது, 2ஆம் நாள் தெருக்கூத்து, 3ஆம் நாள் கூத்து.
So for the Mariamman Jatra it's 3 days and they give a tamelam. So that is an invitation to perform for these 3 days. The first day kapu. That is the
மாரியம்மன் காப்பு
threats,
கட்டுறது. அது
which is
மஞ்சள்
tight.
இதுவும் அந்த
The
அம்மனுக்கு
second day is for the Tirukuttu and the third is for the all-night Kuttu.
அந்த தெருக்கூத்து ஆடுறதுன்றது என்னன்னு கேட்டிங்கன்னா 2வது காலையில் ஒரு வேளை கரகம் கிராமத்தில் பொசிஷன் வரும். அப்போது எதுவும் வேஷம் கிடையாது. மத்தியானம் ஈவினிங் மாலை 4 மணிலுக்கு ஆரம்பித்து ஒரு கட்ட வேஷமும் ஒரு பெண் வேஷம் ஒரு மிருதங்காரர் ஒரு தாளக்காரர் போட்டு வீட்டுக்கு நின்று அவங்க கேட்குற பாட்டை பாடின்னு வரணும். அதான் தெருக்கூத்து.
So the Tirukuttu happens on the second day of the procession and the deity will come twice in procession through the village. On the afternoon procession, 2 performers, one in a male and one in a female costume will accompany her, plus a mridangam player and somebody doing the talam, so the vadya. That is Tirukuttu, and so they will go through the streets of the village and stop in front of every house where there will be Dibaradane, and they will sing songs on the request of onlookers or people living in that
and
house.
And that's when something happened.
அது பேர் தான் தெருக்கூத்து.
And there's something happened. நீங்க சொல்லுங்க.
அப்படி ஆடுன்னு வரும்போது அந்த வீட்டாண்ட நின்று அம்மன் பாட்டு முதல் தீபார்த்தனை பண்ணும்போது அம்மன் பேரில் பாடுவாங்க பாட்டு. அம்மன் பாட்டு பாடிட்டு தீபார்த்தனை முடிஞ்ச பிறகு ஓஹோ ஈஸ்வரி அம்மனுக்கு தீபார்த்தனை ஆகிவிட்டது, அப்பா கூத்தாடிகளா நல்லா வரிசையாக கஷ்டப்பட்டு தட்சதாமலம் பெற்றுண்டு வாங்க அப்படின்னு வாத்தியார் சொல்வார். அதுக்கப்புறம் அவங்க கேட்குற
traditional dialogue. So கஷ்டப்பட்டு they are being impelled to kind of exert themselves here in order to get the tamelam. So this
அப்படி சொல்லும்போது
and when this was said
அப்படி சொல்லும்போது ஒரு வீட்டில் தென்கழனியின் பெருவிட்டு பக்கத்தில் தென்கழனி என்ற ஊரில் நான் தான் பெண் வேஷமாக இருக்கேன், இன்னொருத்தர் ஆண் வேஷமாக இருக்கார். 10 பைசா கொண்டு வந்து கொடுத்தாங்க.
Then the head person of that village, neighboring to Pirungadra, gave 10 paisa, which was an insult to the Vadyar for all the labor done. So அப்பா என்ன சொன்னார்,
அந்த 10 பைசா அப்படியே அவர்கிட்டே கொடுத்து நீயே வச்சுக்கோ, இதுக்காக நாங்கள் வேஷம் காட்டிக்கின்னு 2 வேஷக்காரர் ஒரு தாளக்காரர் ஒரு மிருதங்காரர் நான் ஒரு வாத்தியார் வரணுமா.
So this is the kind of history that doesn't get told. That there's something very real that happens. It's not just about the gods and about the rituals. It's also about economic transaction.
And about
social self-respect.
Because then what happened, so the procession came to a standstill, and it's something which is considered very inauspicious.
Yeah.
So the Vadyar there kind of exerted his power, and so they put down the karakam on a bench with rice, etc. And then there was a village panchayat of the 3 neighboring villages, because the Tirukuttu was also an obligation to perform, to which they could not say no. So here you see the social implication, the caste implication of what it meant to perform Tirukuttu, and that is why for us, when you come from that hereditary background, Kuttadi, Tirukuttu, why these are such problematic words? Because they signal caste. And nowadays performers feel they have left that caste stigma behind. But then in urban areas they continue talking about Tirukuttu. And Tirukuttu, translated into English also, doesn't translate well street theatre. We are not a radical street theatre at all. And there is a fixed place for the all-night performance where the performance will take place. It's not just somewhere in the street. And it is certainly not mobile, and it has a narrative, the all-night performance. So these are all issues which came out of my research, but also through Rajagopal and through many other performers, that we decided to kind of use the name Kattaikkuttu, which we did for 3 years, and then all of a sudden it became a controversy because we had a workshop showing the different styles, and there were people from Chennai and academics, and I don't know. Here actors had taken that right into their own hands to rename the tradition, and apparently they're not supposed to do so, whereas Sadir became Bharatanatyam. Nobody comments on that, that's okay. Peking opera becomes Beijing opera.
அது இதோட தெருக்கூத்து ஆடக்கூடாதுன்னு சொன்னார். தெருக்கூத்து நாங்கள் ஆடுறதெல்லாம் விட்டாச்சு. கூத்து மட்டும்தான் 3ஆம் நாள் ஆடினோம். அன்றைக்கி கூட பஞ்சாயத்து பண்ணி அன்றைக்கி போய் தெருக்கூத்து ஆடவே இல்லை. மறுநாள் கூத்து தான் ஆடணும். அதுக்கப்புறம் அந்த ஊராரே வேஷம் தெருக்கூத்து வேஷம் இல்லாமல் அந்த கரகம் போகக்கூடாதுன்னு அந்த நாள் ஐதீகம் இப்போவும் இருக்குது. எதை கூலிக்கு யாரையா கூட்டு பண்ணுறாங்க.
ஆமாம் சொல்லியாச்சு. So from that moment onwards, Rajagopal's father told him you should never perform at Tirukuttu again. So that was the last.
So what is Kattai? Could you explain a little, how did the etymology change? But Kattai means ornaments?
The Kattai are the ornaments, which are the characteristic of this form of making theatre. And when you wear these Kattai ornaments, so this is basically for the male heroic characters. They have a heroic kind of connotation also, royal, heroic, valiant, ferocious sometimes. And when you wear them, that requires a specific entry routine behind a curtain onto the stage.
Okay.
And drama, the other genre, does not have this specific
So I
routine.
think this was very complex, this exchange. It's not an easy exchange. But I think the point that maybe we can get from this is that the caste dimensions of this form are hugely important. You don't deny your caste, you affirm your caste. And of course, your caste is marginalized. It is stigmatized in society. Okay, we've talked a little bit about the social context. So what are we dealing with here in Kattaikkuttu? You have in some of your writings referred to it as a kind of total theatre. So it includes music, songs, dance, movement, comedy,
Makeup,
spectacle, makeup, dialogue. It's a whole lot of things.
Yes.
That are put together in different combinations. Okay,
Yes.
would it be something like that? And anything you would add? And the dialogue is mostly improvised, so it's not always scripted, or is
No.
part of it scripted and part of it?
Some of the basic dialogues can be scripted, but as a student, you have to learn to construct your own vasanam, and that is a very complex and not easy thing to do, especially not for young children. And these vasanams are very often take the cue from the previous song, Pata or Viruttam, and then the actor needs to elaborate on
Okay,
that.
there are many technical
Yeah.
terms here, so we have to go very slowly. We are not familiar with the context. So Rajagopal, this is your area completely. The songs are very important, and I know that when you teach your actors, you begin with the songs.
Yes.
You begin with song.
Yeah.
That's how you start. It's not a script. You learn the songs. Now there are different kinds. You mentioned something like there's a Viruttam, and there are 2 other kinds.
Yeah.
So we'll just stick to 3. I know you've got many hundreds, but 3. And I'd like you to demonstrate them, because then it'll be easier for us to understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So what are the 3? If you say Viruttam,
Pata, Viruttam are the 2 important ones.
okay.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between the 2? Can you sing maybe if you can just give a little gist, and then he can demonstrate it.
So Pata basically has song, has melody and rhythm, and the Viruttam is more like a sloga-like thing and has in the sung lines only melody, and in between they will perform a small rhythmical session which allows movement, dance steps for the performer. But when you listen to it, you will immediately figure out the difference, because at an emotional level they're very different. The Viruttam you can show the raga as and when you like, and the part is confined by the rhythmical patterns.
Okay, can you demonstrate? Can you sing something for us?
விருத்தம்
Viruttam?
விருத்தம் ஆர் பாட்டு?
What do you want?
Viruttam.
விருத்தம்.
Okay.
விருத்தத்திலேயே பார்த்தீங்கன்னா விருத்தம் அது சில விருத்தங்கள் தொகையராக இருக்கும். தொகையரா வந்து அப்புறம் விருத்தமாக வரும், பாட்டாக வரும், அந்த மாதிரிலாம் இருக்குது. அதில் இப்போ வந்து நான் விருத்தம்
Which
வந்து
என்ன பாட போறீங்க?
நாட்டில் இது துரியோதனன் விருத்தம் மட்டுமா
Duryodhana.
அதிகமாக
From Duryodhana.
துரியோதனன் திரைக்குள்ள.
Inside the curtain. So the Viruttam has 4 lines. Very often they're repeated. You repeat? Pinani. Sada.
வாங்கி பாடுறது கேட்குறேன்.
வாங்கி பாடுறதுக்கு. 4 of which the lines are repeated by the Pinani. So this is the structure of Kutta. There is a performer on stage, and then there is a chorus off stage, actors who are not in role at that moment, and the orchestra. So in the Viruttam you
Why
can hear.
இந்த திரைக்கு விருத்தம் I will sing this. the Kuttu style. This is the Kattaikkuttu.
This is
There
very
inside,
typical kind of Kuttu style.
வருகின்றேனே வந்த எப்படி திரைக்குள்ள இருக்கும்போது அப்புறம் அசெம்பிளி எப்படி வராருன்றதுக்காக தான். அதிகமாய் புகழ் பெற்றவங்க மத்தின ஆபரத்தை ஆளும் மதிகுல தொண்டலான மகாராஜன் திருதராட்டிதல் சதிரோடு மகிழ்ந்தளித்த தனையர்கள் 100 பேரில் அதிபதி துரியந்தாரும் அடல் கொலு மேவினேனே. அதிபதி துரியோதனன் அடல் கொலு மேவினானே. அடல் கொலு இப்பதான் கொலுக்கு வரேன்னு சொல்றார்.
He's arriving into the assembly.
Okay. Wow.
அதுக்கப்புறம் வந்த பிறகுதான் பாட்டு.
And then when he has arrived, he sings a song.
Okay, and this is
In
the
which he
Pata.
identifies himself.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, and that's a different style altogether.
Pata.
துரியோதனே பாடுறேன். இந்த திரை விலகிய பிறகு எப்படி வரார்? நான் தான் துரியோதன. அவர் கட்டைக்குத்து ஸ்டைல் வந்து அவரே
So
விளம்பரப்படுத்திக்கிறார்.
he introduces himself, and this is after the curtain has been whisked away.
Okay.
துரியோதன மகாராஜன் வந்தேனே. துரியோதன மகாராஜன் வந்தேனே. துச்சாதனனோடு ஜெகதி கண்ணனிட பட்சபாதக நிலையை கண்டு தேரி வந்தனமாரி துரியோதன மகாராஜன் வந்தேனே. இங்க என்ன ஏன் இதுக்கு பாடணும்னா திரைக்குள்ள வருகிறேன் சொல்றார். திரை விலகிய பிறகு சபையில் உட்கார்ந்த பிறகு வந்தேன்.
So now
I am ready
he
வந்துட்டேன் சபைக்கு
has
அப்படின்றார்.
Okay.
இது இன்னொரு மீனிங் என்னன்னா அவர் வீட்டுக்குள்ள இருக்கிறார் வெளிய சபைக்கு போறாருன்றதும் எடுத்துக்கலாம்.
So as we can see, my God, there's this incredible pitch, and that's because of big audiences. And very often earlier there was no microphone or anything. No microphone, just your voice. Now you have mentioned another style of singing which you have described as a kind of rap.
Yeah.
Okay, what is that?
The suru. It's called suru part. Again, Rashwan needs to demonstrate. It's because we very often get as a kind of criticism that it's not audible what they sing. Well, firstly, it's high pitch, as you have heard, because it needs to carry far, and we don't use amplification.
Even
still,
now?
Even now.
Okay.
And this also does not work very well with amplification. And secondly, the language is used in a way that it creates its own music. So the words start creating the atmosphere.
Okay.
Or surupata.
போதும் போதும் பிட்மாரே. சிசுபாலம் பாட்டு.
Sisubala.
போதும் சொன்னது போதும்.
Enough.
போதும் போதும் பிட்மாரே. இந்த புல்லானை வல்லவான் என்று நல்லவானே சொல்லுவது போதும் போதும் பிட்மாரே. சுது துடுக்கு புரிந்தது நடக்க தெரியாது செய்யும் திருடன் மீது மன்னர்கள் முன்னிப்போது நீ சொன்ன சொல் தகாது. இத்தரைக்குள் வெற்றி மூடி சுத்தரை பிழைக்கினாய என்ன மதி உனக்கு இப்படி கட்டு விட்டதா. 7:30 சனி இவனை தொட்டு விட்டதா. மன்னன் தருமனிடமானம் கெட்டு விட்டதா. மகோ பெரியவன் நல்லோம் மன்னித்த மற்றொரு தன்னால் அவன் நக்கை அறுத்திருப்பேன். இதெல்லாம் உந்தன் அகங்காரம் என்னும் வித்தை ஆகட்டும் அவனுக்கு அகுமப்பர் என் சமர்த்து. ஐயோ ஐயோ இடையன் வீட்டில் மையா திருடி உண்ட பையன் கிருஷ்ணனுக்கு செய்யும் பூஜை என்பது போதும் போதும் இட்மாரே.
Wow. I've seen Rajagopal perform, but not at such close quarters. And I can tell you it's very powerful. Okay, we're going to shift now. Duryodhana, we are dealing. Mahabharat. Kattaikkuttu is Kattaikkuttu, Mahabharat territory. Okay?
Yes.
Now, you have done a lot of work on this, on the Mahabharat connection. Could you just elaborate on it for it? Why is Mahabharat so important?
I think for me that's very personal, but Mahabharata is one of the stories which offers unending opportunities for dramatization. And none of the characters is black and white. They all have their mistakes, they have the good things, there's a lot of hidden agendas. And it is also like Shakespeare, the question, why is Shakespeare still performed nowadays? Why not Mahabharata? You know, it's a very contemporary story. This is what I tell my donors when they ask me, can't you do something modern? Then I say, but we do Mahabharata.
What could be more modern?
Yeah, what can be more modern nowadays?
Yeah. That's what we're
So-
living with.
and
This
then-
is the Mahabharata.
Yeah,
what
this
we're
is the
living with.
Mahabharata. And when you start working with it, it is a kind of windows opening up into windows, and that is the very interesting thing. When I studied this as a student in Sanskrit, I had no clue what I was reading, so I could not figure out who was who and how this worked. So it is only through this kind of exposure to Kutte, and even nowadays, every time again, I think, oh, it's just slightly different from what I thought it was. You know, so there are all these constant kind of discoveries, and also the story lends itself, fortunately, I should say, still for reinterpretation, which with the Ramayana nowadays has become highly problematic. There we will be more kind of careful, even though we have done a Ramayana reinterpretation. For the Mahabharata, that is still more easy. More
Okay.
scope.
I'm
Yeah.
going to, Mahabharata is large,
Endless.
vast, endless. Okay, so I'm going to zero in on what I know is probably one of the most precious things in the Mahabharata, and it's the role of Karna. Karna is one of the most important characters in the Tamil rendering of Mahabharata, more so than in the north of India. Now, what is it about Karna that is so special and that touches people? You have played Karna Moksham. And what is it about Karna's character? Why is it so appealing to Tamil audiences even today? Who is Karna to you?
நண்பனுக்காக செய்நன்றி மறவாதன் கர்ணன்.
His
அது ரொம்ப எனக்கு
loyalty,
பிடிக்கும்.
that he will never forget the help he received from Duryodhana.
Okay, so loyalty is
Loyalty.
important.
Loyalty.
நல்லவனோ கெட்டவனோ ஊருக்கு எப்படியோ எனக்கு தெரியாது, எனக்கு நல்லவன் துரியோதனன் அப்படின்னு எடுத்துக்கிறான் கர்ணன்.
Yeah. Whatever people say, whether he is good or bad, this is what he did for me, and I can never forget that.
Karna is
அதுக்கு ஒரு உதாரணமாக சொல்லுகிறேன். பேர் பெற்ற துரியன் வெண்டி பெருந்திருவாள் என்னோடு சீர்பெற பகடையாடி செழித்திருக்கின்ற நாளை நேர்வட கணவன் வந்தார் என்றுமே எழுந்தாளப்போ மார்பமும் தாணி தொட்டு மறுத்தனன் பொறுத்தான் பெண்ணே.
Yeah, this is the famous story.
எடுக்கவா கோர்க்கவா அப்படின்னு வில்லி எழுதுவார்.
Which-
அதுக்கு இந்த கூத்து செயல் எழுதுகிற விருத்தம் இது.
And this is based on a small line from Viliputur Bharadam, Yedakkuvo Kokavo. And that has opening a window into a window, a story behind it, that one day Karna went to the court of Duryodhana, and Duryodhana was absent, but Bhanumati, the wife of Duryodhana, was there. And she invites him for a game of dice. And at the moment that Karna thinks he is winning the game, Duryodhana enters, but he is sitting with his back to the door, so only Bhanumati can see him, and she gets up. And Duryodhana sticks out his arm and touches her, and her ornaments
Mundani.
that she wears on her hips falls, and all the pearls scatter across the floor. And then Duryodhana enters at this moment, so this can be interpreted in a totally wrong manner. But he asks Karna what happened, and then Karna explains, and then Duryodhana asks Bhanumati, shall I pick them up and string them back together?
அதுதான் அங்கே என்ன சொல்ற தமிழ்ல, கண்ணால் காண்பதும் பொய், காதால் கேட்பதும் பொய், தீர விசாரிப்பதே மெய் என்பதை உணர்ந்த துரியோதனன் என்ன நடந்தது என்று கேட்கிறார். கேட்டதற்கு கர்ணன், ஐயா நான் மொழிகிறேன், என்னடா கனவு காண்கிறேன். அதுதான்.
Yeah, you can't trust what you see, you first have to inquire what has happened. And this is in the context that Karna has a discussion with his wife, Ponurvi, whether Duryodhana is a good or bad person. And he gives this example. Whereas she says, how can a man who disrobes a woman in public be a good person?
Yeah.
And so this is a public discussion within the performance of Karna Moksha, where the actors actually make the audience the judge. You judge.
Now, you've mentioned in passing that Karna has a wife.
Yeah.
Now, if you turn to Vyasa, there's no real mention of Karna's wife. I mean, but she's a major character in Karna Moksham.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ponurvi.
Ponurvi.
Yes. Could you tell us what her role is? Because she also, there's a caste dimension, as we know, to Karna, and she also gives him a hard time, doesn't she?
Yes. Rustom has read my work very well. Thank you. Ponurvi is an interesting character because it's not only in the Tamil tradition, the Kuttu tradition, that she is a major character in the play, also in Indonesia and the Wayang tradition. And right now I have a correspondence with somebody from Gujarat who writes about the wife of Karna. So apparently the Sanskrit tradition does not feature a wife at all, but it is said that his sons die on the battlefield, so there must have been a wife. But talking about this gendered context we're working now, she never features in the story, but maybe she's written out of it, we don't know. So Ponuri, also Shubhangi, so she's also a very Sanskritic name, but Ponuri would be a very kind of folk Tamil name, and she feels she's done a déclassé marriage to Karna, because in the Kuttu tradition, the story of Karna is very much interpreted in terms of caste. So his father and mother are unknown, and therefore he's of unknown or low caste. And that features throughout the entire performance. I must also add that this specific play is performed on the occasion of a real death as a part of the funeral rituals. Especially at the moment where, in the case of a woman who's lost her husband, this is the moment that signifies she becomes a widow. Like Ponurvi in the play when Karna leaves her battle and is killed.
Yeah, there's a lot that this is a deep, it needs textual kind of analysis. So I'm going to make a little bit of a shift here. So very interesting. We think of, and this is your intervention also, which has been pointed out earlier by Vikram, the role of women performers playing male roles. Okay, this is bringing it down to the present moment. Okay, so let's face it. This tradition, Kattaikkuttu, is a very male tradition in the sense that all the performers, till quite recently, are men. Basically, women are not seen performing in this tradition at all. But yet, when we go to the textual tradition, you have a woman character there. There's Panuruvi, who is a very strong character, I might tell you. She's not a washer. She challenges her husband every step of the way. A lot of agency in that woman, but played by a man. Okay? So ultimately, it's the representation of woman, even though the woman's role is there, is ultimately represented by men in performance. Now, you all made a big shift in your school, in the Gurukulam, okay? And I think this is a radical shift because many of the young women we have right here in this audience have played the roles of Duryodhana, they played the roles of Abhimanyu, they played the roles, all the major heroic roles. Women have played those roles. How did that come about? And why was it important that they do this?
My father told us, கூத்து வந்தா எல்லா வேஷமும் ஆடணும். அதாவது தமிழ்ல ஒரு வார்த்தை தோட்டிலிருந்து துரை வேஷம் வரைக்கும் ஆட தெரிஞ்சுக்கணும் அப்படின்னு. ஸோ கட்டிக்காரிலேருந்து ராஜா வேஷம் போடுறதுக்கும் ஆண் வேஷம் பெண் வேஷம் எல்லாமே ஆட தெரிஞ்சாதான் ஒரு வாத்தியார் சொல்லுவாங்க.
So it's very much the tradition of his father that as a performer you need to be able to perform all roles, from the scavenger to the king.
I did it all the role. I am teaching also all the roles. Okay, you can do this role, male role, female role. Both.
So now to the women he teaches also all the roles. That is not depending on gender. That is Rajagopal's point of view.
To use one of the words, Vikram, you brought up, it's a word we use in politics, although there's not much evidence of it in politics, and that's democracy, you know. And so is there something like a democratic practice in performance? And in this tradition, to give women that opportunity, to play, and they relish those roles, I might add, just as I have seen in their school an all-night performance of Abhimanyu's death in the Chakravyuh, 8-hour performance, and it was performed by students, by young people, from toddlers, from about 6 years old to teenagers. And the fact that they can sustain that kind of performance, all-night performance, that's something most professionals can't do. They don't have the stamina, they don't have the concentration. It's an extraordinary education, we get to that. But I want to get back to gender a little bit. This is a word we use, and sometimes there are no ready-made Indian words for gender, because gender and sex get kind of conflated. It's not an easy area, but Hannah, what is your take on this? The role of female, we talk a lot about female impersonation, men playing women's roles, and there's a lot written on that, but not the other way around. What do you think are the takeaways from this intervention?
I think, like you said, if the role of Ponurvi, or for that matter Draupadi, same text, same songs, but when it is performed by a woman, already then the performance changes, irrespective of what she actually says. And I think it is very important to open up these traditions, if they want to survive, to all genders. So we're not talking only about men, women. There are a lot
Other
of
genders,
different bodies, including my own as a white woman in a Tamil so-called folk tradition. So, and as Rajagopal says, he wants to cast on the basis of talent. Can you do that role? Do you have that stamina? Do you have the voice? Do you have the speed of movement, which is important? And then, as he has been brought up, as a performer, you need to be able to do all the roles. That is also an economical perspective, because when you can do all the roles, you're an asset to a company. A company can't have all kind of specialists only. You should be an all-rounder.
Right.
But of course, also for the students in our school, when you do that, perform that opposite gender role, it gives you information about what it means to be that other person. And I think that empathy is a very important aspect of it also. And the whole profession of performance is about empathy, about becoming that other for that moment of the performance. Another statement of his father is, when you perform a dog, you have to bark. So that summarizes it very well.
You have to, that's amazing. Tell me, when you teach, Raju, because you're a teacher in addition to being many things, how do you teach these roles? Do you have a different way of teaching when you're dealing with a female student as opposed to a male student, or is the same kind of teaching?
No, I'm teaching time, which role, I change my role also.
Okay.
That time I am not Rajagopal.
Okay. So you
For example, one time I was in the 2000 workshop. I was teaching the Kuttu actors, the Irani role. And very late, and go see, she was making action. I didn't see that. I was
in the role.
in the role.
You were in the
Only
role,
workshop.
but when you teach
teaching.
teach பண்ணும்போது எப்படி
டீச் பண்ணும்போது அப்படிதான் அந்த ரோல், அந்த பெண் வேஷம் நானே பெண் வேஷம் ஆயிடுவேன். அப்படி இப்படிதான் இருக்கணும் அப்படின்னு. ஆண் வேஷம்னா எப்படி என்ன எப்படி இருக்கணும் அப்படின்னுவேன். இந்த தூணில் இருப்பானா உன்னூறு அப்படின்னா அந்த மாதிரி டீச் பண்ணும்போது என்ன வேஷம் சொல்றனோ நானே அந்த வேஷத்துக்கு போயிடுவேன்.
So he actually, when I look at it from my perspective, he tries to give them that energy which is needed to get into that role. And so then basically that becomes a kind of, in the beginning, copying, but once you can copy and you have that kind of intonation and the voice and the movement and the body language right, only then you can start interpreting that in your own style. Yeah. And so it is very much about, he tries to kind of energize the students into getting into role once he is giving them the foundational, the basics. Because yeah, he had a student.
Before in the Gurukulam, I was teaching the only ladies, 15 ladies. I was teaching the Duryan role, Usha.
Yeah.
Sorry, you are my student. Sit.
Yeah, and she told him, I can't do
அந்த நேரம்
this.
பெண் ஆண்
And she
பார்க்க
could not
மாட்டாங்க.
read and write. And so Rajpal sat her down and said, you are my student. And she's excellent performer. She went on to work with Bangay. That's Usha.
Yeah.
But so these are some of the other problems of the traditional performers. The women we work with, they were from the drama genre. Very complicated group of people, half from nomadic backgrounds, multiple caste, intercaste, whatever. And they could not read and write. So everything has to go by ear. Yeah. And then the men were standing on the compound when we paid them to receive the money.
இல்ல
Well, that happens. then,
Yes.
அவங்க யாரும் வர வைக்கணும்.
Okay, I want to shift now towards I'm coming to the end so we can have a conversation with the audience. Institution building, it's quite a shift. You have been responsible for building two major institutions. One is the Kattaikkuttu Sangam, which I think is an assembly of many different Kattaikkuttu companies in rural Tamil Nadu in your area, and you can talk more about it. And the other is the Kattaikkuttu Gurukulam, which is a school. Okay. Now, which came first? Could you tell us how you started? Because institution building is quite different from running a company. You know, it's not simple. Yeah. You know, so can you tell us how it started?
Yeah, very very briefly, in 1990, this was Rajpal's idea actually, that performers need to speak to each other and see each other's performances. And during the high season, that is never possible.
Right.
And as performers, you know what happens in the performance community. There's a lot of jealousy, there's a lot of competition going on. So this is not easy to get performers together and create a kind of platform where we can discuss our professional needs. And so this is the Sangam is on an individual membership, not a company membership, because the companies also change every season, where a performer can decide to become a member or not. And so some performers don't, because they may feel that the Sangam threatens their livelihood or whatever. These reasons are never told to us explicitly. But right now we have 150 plus members across about 4 different districts. Kutte, we still don't know how widespread Kutte is, because there are no surveys, there are no concrete data. So this goes up to Salem most probably, and for them it is too far to become a member of the Sangam. And then the second important thing, and that is really the realization of Rajpal's dream as a young boy being a professional performer, a child actor at the age of 10, because it is child labor in the end. Was the establishment of the Gurukulam, so a residential school where children had access to complete Kutte training in combination with formal education. So they did a double curriculum and comprehensive care.
Yes. I think that is one of the most radical achievements I've ever seen in terms of creative education. Something that in our part of the world, Rabindranath Tagore had thought about with great visionary intensity. And this, of course, is somewhat different context, socially marginalized background, you know, and with a certain kind of caste status, and giving them quality education. I can qualify for that because I've been to their mathematics classes, and I've never seen children more hooked by an arithmetic class, which is really hard to imagine. But I also want to share that the education extends beyond Kutu and beyond arithmetic, geography, etc. It's the way the children hold themselves, the way they conduct themselves. This is a very important thing. So when you went into the dining hall, when you're sitting and everybody is sitting together and having food, I was very struck by the fact that they were very disciplined eating their food, you know. I mean, it's not that they weren't chatting and, you know, joking, that went on, but there was a way in which they were eating. There was a lot of dignity, there was a lot of respect for themselves and for the other, and I think that came from the school. It's a very remarkable achievement that the two of you have achieved, but the sadness is that the school had to shut down at some point, and this is where we are going into the harder realities, not just of institution building, but of sustaining an institution, because that is, how many students were there in the school? And
In total?
in total?
In total, we've had almost 200 students, but many of them stayed with us for 8 to 10 years. So this was a very long-term effort. Some of them are sitting there. You can ask them how long they've been in the school.
Right.
And yes,
What
for
were the
me-
difficulties that you faced in, it was huge work, I mean, just the
Ma-
fun.
The funding, of course, is huge, but also the often non-cooperative attitude of the government, who said, "Why should there be a Kuttu school? Why? What are these kids going to do with it?" And the kind of obstruction at a level that when we asked for renewal, the renewal didn't come through for the recognition of the school, and we got very fed up. Then the child welfare committee comes in, and they never speak to the children.
You mentioned once that these government officials, whoever they are, came late at night
Yeah,
when the
woke them
children
up
were sleeping and woke them up. You
and
know,
said, "Can you sing a song?"
sing a song. I mean,
I
this
think
is
I've
the
never
level.
been so angry in my life. Then I asked this guy, "Do you have children?" He said, "I said, shall I come and wake him up right now, and ask him to sing a song?" You don't do these kind of. So they still remember me, I think, in this department.
You know, but this is it. You're up against tremendous odds, and
Yes.
you know.
And so, I mean, a little bit of support is really needed to make these kind of institutions work. And Kattaikkuttu, being still a stigmatized folk art form, does not get that government support. Yeah, there is an interest, but it's only lip service, Then there should be also made money available, and that just does not happen. And how long can we fight? Another problem has been for a long time that we need successors. Rajagopal needs people to teach. I can't also go on endlessly fundraising. People need to take over, but we're very happy now to have a small mini company on site, and it becomes their very difficult responsibility to take over and do things in their own way.
But it's very remarkable that you're even thinking about this and putting it into action. Because one of the biggest problems we've had in Indian theatre is we've had luminaries, but they've never had a second guard. So when the luminaries die, there's very rarely a new crop of people who can take on that responsibility. Many institutions. I'm going to end shortly with the last question.
May
Yeah,
I
sure,
may I
please.
also reflect on that, because I know for many of the young students how difficult that decision is to become a professional performer, and they really have to fight against the odds
Yeah.
to come that far, and that is not something we can force. That is taking time, and they need to figure out who they are and what they want to do. And then you don't become a Bollywood actor, you become a Kuttu actor. And Tavam starts with this first remark, "So what do you do with Kuttu performers?" And then the interlocutor asks, "Kuta," in a very denigratory way. And that is what they face on a daily basis.
So
So
the
this
struggle
social
is
change is needed.
yeah, social change.
Yeah.
I mean, you've already begun that process by, in a sense, facilitating women playing men's roles, say, and other related issues. But you can't really change how their families or how society is going to
No.
view them. That is a larger struggle. That will go on for a long time.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to just end on a somewhat more different note, and that has to do with relationships that you form across your particular context. So, for example, you've worked with T.M. Krishna, okay? And that was one experience. So, Rajagopal, what was it like for you to work with T.M. Krishna? He has a different training. He's a Carnatic vocalist, and I know he has deep respect for you, and the two of you worked together. What was it like for you?
Yeah, Hann asked me a long time ago, we'll do some other culture. That time Anna told T.M. Krishna come to perform with Kuttu. Okay, we must discuss, and I like him, and lot of time discussion, and we agree. So I told we are 4.5 Shruti, you come to our way. So then I was in the Duryodhana and the 18 day. I was singing he was singing this. One song I gave it the Kutu song, the Krishna Embassy to the Kopamagama Bobadi, the one song that he was singing that song. So,
But
see
yeah,
the Krishna, at that time I have Duryodhana already. So Duryodhana imagination that time. It was nice experience.
you had also discussion with him about what
discussion
is art.
also between, yes, before.
In between.
So I programmed that. And the English time out.
So it's quite unusual for a Carnatic singer who's very, very respected in Chennai music circles, and you know what their standards are like, and to work with somebody from a very different context. But I do know from T.M. Krishna that he has the greatest respect for that interaction. So what do you think happened with that kind of...
It was a very interesting experiment for me to kind of witness and be part of, because it brought out very clearly also what we share, how much of Carnatic is there in Kuttu, and what maybe has disappeared from the classical tradition, which once was there. They even managed to sing a Mangalam. The clowns were singing the Mangalam, which is derived from a classical concert. So it was like a kind of funny intervention which we kept. They had Rajagopal and Krishna had a very interesting discussion in between the two excerpts we did, and that focused on what is art. So quite cynically then Rajagopal wrote a song saying art is labor, or rape. Whereas Krishna also quite cynically from his side, because he doesn't really believe that, but art is jnana, is spirituality. So here you see how these two traditions, which actually share a lot, are positioned on the outer ends of a spectrum from the folk to the classical.
And I think that's
the
an
social
extraordinary...
issue. Yeah.
Art
and
is
I actually
labor.
doubt
That
in
makes
this
sense, yeah.
today's lecture I had already I referred to this, and immediately there was talk about what is more sophisticated, and you know,
That's
you
the
get
problem.
into a whole problem, refined,
Refinement. Okay, I'm going to now end it with another kind of interaction you've had, and that is with Shamoh, and who I'm happy that I was able to introduce the two of you together. Thereafter, it went. Here we have something quite special. There is a group of women who are very sensitive to issues around gender, who are based in Calcutta, and with a very Bengali context. They worked on Hidimba, another Mahabharat character who is not mentioned very in an elaborate way in Vyasa's Mahabharat, just 2 mentions, but she's an extraordinary character, and they've done a great, great play on that. So they come to your campus and have an interaction with your actors. So what was that for you? And we've just seen a very sensitive exhibition that has been put together, very intimate exhibition, I would say, walking through the utensils, so suggesting the labor that women have in domestic life, and then going into very, I think, nuanced kind of details of that interaction. So what was that for you, Hannah?
I must honestly say that we didn't know each other at all, so we just decided to do it, Titash and me, after having been introduced, discussing then the time frame and saying, okay, you pay for your own journeys and we provide food and accommodation. On this basis, this has run. It was a very kind of emotional kind of experience, in a sense, that a group of performers, different bodied, come to Tamil Nadu to see our form. This never happens in Tamil Nadu. We never have that kind of attention, in a sense. And then also being able to have this kind of in-depth discussion, which was not so much with me as with the actual performers speaking to performers.
Wow.
So I didn't want to intervene in that too much, but I know they had multiple discussions. We did workshops in which we kind of showed what we did. They did a workshop for us. They showed a little bit of their play. We showed a little bit of our play. So, and then we have been in conversation after they left. And then also I think the idea of the exhibition came up, and then it became clear we were coming to Calcutta, so we thought, okay, we can extend this. But for them to take this initiative, to take such a close look at what is happening, and I must also say at that moment, We did not have the mini rep on site. We had done Tavam over the pandemic time, but at least I think 5 of the women performers for the first time were performing with professional male companies. And it was quite an experience for them, I think. So they talk about this. What happens? How is the role division? What are they supposed to do? How are they looked upon? Mahalakshmi commented on a guy coming on set, the Panchayat leader actually, and commenting on her performing, and then not knowing what to say. Should I go against it? Should I say something? Should I leave it? And then she went into a discussion with him, and at the end of the all-night performance, the wife of Panchayat leader turns up and starts scolding Mahalakshmi for talking to her husband. So you see the complexity of what they face. That is why when we are asking, will you become our successors, this is not a simple question. No. And other support is also needed. And how do we break that stigma? Why is there such a stigma on this beautiful art form? What is it, especially in Tamil Nadu, where people come with the preconceived idea of caste, I think, basically, but also this idea of aesthetically, and there is low quality kuttu. There's a lot of it happening also. So quality is an issue. But then this is a different aesthetics from Carnatic music. And our collaboration with Krishna was, of course, because Krishna asked us to collaborate. But I don't know whether it would have happened when we would have taken the initiative and asked. Right. So there is also a lot of, not that I don't blame him, but power plays a role also in all these.
But I
and
think
that with somehow this power relationship was not there. So
no,
that
that's
kind
the
of
beauty
enabled
of it. Yeah, that's
the
beauty
open relationship. And not only women, we had a lot of mixed companies.
No, but I mean, that's, I feel, very simply, I feel, we have such a vast country with so much richness in every single region, as I have traveled quite widely. And sadly, the richness tends to be regionalized, tends to be locked in certain kinds of pockets, and there's not enough exchange, there's not enough conversation across the borders. And you don't have to go abroad for that. You can do it right within the borders of your own country. But for that, you do need infrastructure, you do need support, and I can only hope that you will get as much support as you can to continue doing your remarkable work. And with those comments, I'm going to open it now to questions from the audience. Anything you wish to say? Any clarifications? We haven't covered everything, but any? Yeah, Shumit.
Wait for the microphone to come.
I shall try and project.
Sumit, I know you can project, but it is being recorded.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, could we have a microphone, please?
I'll just let him.
Yeah, sure.
So it's a simple practical question. The people who are teaching mathematics and geography at the school, were they also Kuttu practitioners? No. So they was paid for separately.
Yeah, and it was quite a big division between formal education and kuttu. Now, this is one of the things we were never really able to bridge, and especially when the demands from the government also become large, that you need to have a B.Ed qualified teacher after 6th standard. And so they are focused on completing the syllabus and not on kuttu. And when the kids in between changing less hours would do security period-like movement in the corridors, they would get upset, and I would be telling them, look, this is why they can sit again in your next class. So in terms of education, the school, I think, has also been, for me, not coming from the educational side, I have seen children with huge trauma being able to cope with life because they were training in kuttu. And this, because it is a traditional theatre form, it provides them with a trajectory, a way to hang on to life. And that is something which formal education does not do. The teacher knows what is right and what is the wrong answer. But in kuttu, the freedom Rajagopal gives them, you have to figure out how things work yourself. And so children can put up an all-night performance in the absence of a teacher, but they're not able to do homework without the presence of a teacher. So what is happening here? So the educational system is truly problematic, and one reason why we think we let go of the education and focus on theatre only.
Yeah. But that balance is the challenge, isn't it? Because you need the jobs at the end of
Yes.
the day, so they have to be able to supplement their income. Yes, please.
Hi, thank you for such a dynamic conversation and for inviting us into it. I had a clarification question or more of a curiosity. You said that on talking about the institution building and sustaining, is there anything that you wished you would have done differently now looking back in order to have sustained it? And talking about the second guard, do you have a second guard so that it keeps going even after ... Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that question. Yeah, to be very honest, I don't think we would have done things differently, but some of the things you do are really forced by the donors. So the number of students, and they go on, you have to deliver, you have to come up with key performance indicators and all these kind of things. And when we would not have needed to do that, I think we could have worked in a more efficient manner, also economically. But that is how the donor system works. And now also we're forced with the kind of capacity building we need to do and whatever you have. And as I said, I think we do have follow-up, but that takes time. But and we can't. They have to live their own lives, so they need to decide what they want to do. The infrastructure is there, the space is there. Funds, we need to look for funding again. And that becomes increasingly problematic because NGOs nowadays have to be run as businesses, and we are not a business. So where is this model for an NGO to do the things we want to do without having to kind of go to that business side?
I have to share here the terrible experience. I'm a kind of confidant at some level. There was a foreign donor, and they wanted them to get a more corporate kind of, positioning on their organization. So they said you need an expert, or what do you call those people?
Consultant.
A consultant, right. Now this consultant, I had a chat with this consultant, there were other people. He had absolutely no experience of performance, number one. He had no experience of Kattaikkuttu at all. He was oblivious of caste, including his own, which happened to be upper caste. And, I said, how can this man have the presumption to actually advise them who've been working and slaving and laboring for 20 years to keep an organization together? He has no, as we would say in jargon, domain knowledge.
Yeah.
None at all. Zero.
But
And he was getting more money than, let's say that. I mean, that.
Yeah, he came from McKinsey, so yeah, that's your domain. And he was paid the same amount which we got as grant, 10 lakh. I did not get a grant now because I aborted the consultancy.
No, to give her credit, this is not very viable. I mean, how can you go on pretending that you're going to learn from someone like that, who's really a decent guy by every other standard,
Yes.
but he just doesn't care about this.
And also the major problem is he never spoke to the stakeholders, that are the performers. That is P.Rajagopal, that is our executive board. Our executive board are performers. That is the younger generation. So that is where it needs to start. Otherwise we build something which is an empty house.
Any other questions, please? Yes, please.
Well, it was a wonderful evening, a great revelation, totally, I was awestruck. And though I didn't understand a word of Tamil, but the performance which Mr. Rajagopal and which students did was truly inspiring. I've never seen such inspired performance, just struck at your heart, such struck with your heart, without even understanding a word of the language. That was the great part of it. And wonderful, it's again great, great evening for us to know that, in Indian historians have done a disservice that, they have not projected this, the Tamil glory of the Tamils, Tamil Nadu is such a glorious tradition of cultural riches, of which Kittu is one of it. Our historians have not brought this out into the fore. One of the reasons your problems you're facing is because, in North, very few people know about these glorious traditions of the South, of Tamil, of what the Tamils have achieved. So that's one part, I think more and more education needs to be made throughout the country, should know about what the Tamils had achieved in the earlier centuries. Now my question is, regarding the Mahabharata, as you mentioned, I want point to say Karna. You said Karna has not been, has been given a greater importance in the South. I don't really agree with you. In the North, we call Karna Danveer. And in Tagore, in Bengal, Tagore has glorified Karna to a status higher than the Pandavas. So it's not that Karna has been, not given his status here. Now my question is, since you performed the Mahabharata, now Mahabharata is still is a very interesting epic. Now I want to know about the character of Krishna, how you represent Krishna. Because Krishna, in the Mahabharata, is as a child, he's full of mischief and laughter and fun. As he grows up, he kills his maternal uncle, establishes a kingdom, and then becomes a friend, counselor, friend, philosopher, guide of the Pandavas. Till the Kurukshetra war begins, then Krishna begins he shows his real nature. He gives the knowledge of the Gita. And Gita, as you know, is where you study the aim, purpose, objective, meaning of life, what life really means. Now, do you in your theatre, do you try to touch upon the spiritual aspect of the Mahabharata, the meaning of life, objective of life, purpose of life, what life is all about, why we are here, and birth, rebirth, birth, death, rebirth, and all those philosophical questions, because when you go into the Mahabharata, is really wide.
Okay, there's a very different perspective that's going to come from here. Okay, Bolo.
Hang on. Yes, we do give a perspective on life, I think, especially Karna Moksham on the occasion of death, but we don't do Bhagavad Gita. Not at all. And we actually do the opposite of Bhagavad Gita, because in the Kuttu tradition, the Mahabharata and the war, these are violent events. This is a sacral kind of performance tradition, not a ritual one, and not one that propagates religion in any way. Krishna, because we take the Mahabharata very often only from the moment of Draupadi's marriage, so already that Krishna is quite a scheming person with a hidden agenda, I would say. Mirrored by Shakuni on the other side. These two, they are like, they say something, but they do something different. So in Karna Moksham, actually, there is a scene where Krishna refuses to go to war. And Karna and Shalya, his charioteer, they are on the battlefield already, and all of a sudden Krishna says to Arjuna, "No, I can't do this." And then Arjuna asks him, "Why?" And he says, "Yeah, Karna has this snake weapon, and I'm sitting on front of this chariot, so it will hit me first." And then Karna and then Arjuna says, "But you sleep on the snake. How can you be afraid?" So this goes on for some time. And then Krishna says, "Yeah, but I know for sure you're a coward. You will become afraid and you will run away from this fight." And then Arjuna, of course, "How can you say I'm a coward and I've done this, and he comes with the whole thing." So finally, Krishna considers, and they go to war. But at the moment when Arjuna draws the arrow and points it at Karna and looks at Karna's face, he says to Krishna, "I can't shoot it. I'm seeing my older brother. I have to go and make sure that Yudhishthira is safe in the tent camp." And then Krishna says, "You see, I told you." And then they go and they meet Yudhishthira, and this is a quite emotional scene, but in the end it is Yudhishthira who legitimizes the killing of Karna, saying, "Use the arrow," because Arjuna has also sworn, he insults, and Yudhishthira insults Arjuna, and Arjuna has sworn that whoever insults him or his bow, he will kill. So Yudhishthira says, "The arrow you pointed at me, use him to kill Karna, consider him your older brother." And so the killing of Karna is legitimized by Dharmaraja. and it is the opposite version of the Bhagavad Gita. It is a violent strife. That is what Mahabharata is about, in my opinion, as it is shown in Kuttu. And that is also the reason why actors and performers can get kind of in possession like stage. And it is about killing and bloodshed. And these are the moments which are very well defined in the performance tradition.
Hannah has a very, we won't go into it now because it's late, but possession plays a very important role in the Mahabharata. That the state, the act of killing is not possible without entering a state of possession. But this just indicates there are so many diverse ways of reading the Mahabharata. Professor Sukthankar, who is the grand editor of the critical edition of the Mahabharata, is very, very negative things to say about Karna, very opinionated. But you're right, in other northern parts there's a different reading. The Mahabharata is open, and it's very significant that this is the primary text, if you will, of this tradition that we have been talking about. It is the Mahabharata, and it's one among many ways in which it continues to live, you know.
Yeah, and it is sometimes also the very archaic representations, like there's writing about it, but come up in the Kuttu tradition. What you think is a kind of invention and turns out to be a very archaic element. And the possession element is described in Vyasa.
Yes.
He uses the term avish, entering into, and these are then basically the asuras who possess the Kaurava side, including Bhishma and all the great warriors. And that is from that moment onwards they bent on war. So there are elements in the Sanskrit version which we don't read in a way because we don't perform it, I sometimes think. When it would be performed, we would have discovered why it is written in this specific way, but that has become a written text collided from many different versions of the Mahabharata. You see that in Sunda's version.
Okay, so
all the notes are there. It is not one book.
Yeah, it's not one book.
No.
But what is amazing that all of this is happening in your organization with young people. It's not just happening with pundits or great scholars. It's young people who are actually enacting these roles, thinking these roles, questioning these roles, and that is what makes the whole process of your pedagogy, your creativity, so very rich and so very inspiring. So can we give them a round of applause?
They deserve more than a round of applause, yeah? They deserve many rounds of applause. Just a little reference to Priyadashi's thing, the difference in perception of Karna north of the Vindhyas and south of the Vindhyas. As a child, I have often heard my mother say, when I sometimes got into a mood of being generous, she used to rebuke me and used to say, Periya Dharala Prabhu, Romba Karnan Nenepo. Yeah, think that, yeah, you're a very generous type you are, yeah? Do you think you're Karna or what, yeah? So this Karna as a generous person, the perception is south of the Vindhyas also, yeah? It's not a separate, totally divided perception altogether. And Rustom, coming to this honcho from McKinsey's, you should realize that most of these people carry a designation which has con at the beginning. Having said that, I have to say that my designation at the Victoria Memorial Hall is also program consultant. And you're very right about the fact that often consultants don't even know what they are talking about, yeah, or the subject they are referring to. Right, good. So thank you very much, Rustom, for steering this entire conversation the way only you can.
Yes.
You know, touching upon all the aspects of it. Thank you very much. And may I request Jointo to please hand over a small memento on behalf of Victoria Memorial Hall to first Rustom Bharucha.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you.
And of course, as far as Rajagopal and Hann are concerned, what does one say? You know, I have to say, Varke Kutudane.
ஆமாம்.
ஸோ வாழ்க்கையே கூத்தானா?
வாழ்க்கை மட்டும் இல்லை, பெரியவங்க சொன்னது என்னன்னு கேட்டிங்கன்னா, உலகமே நாடக மேடை.
உலகமே நாடக மேடை, அது ஷேக்ஸ்பியர் அவரும் சொல்லியிருக்காரு. ஓகே,
அதனால வாழ்க்கை என்பது அதில் ஒரு இடை சேருகள்.
ஸோ அந்த கூத்து ஸ்டைல்லையே நான் சொல்கிறேன்.
கூத்துலேயே சொல்லணும்னா அதான் கூத்து ஸ்டைல்லையே நீ சொல்லணும்னா என்ன உன்னோட பெரிய கூத்தா போச்சு,
பெரிய கூத்தா போச்சேன்னு
அந்த கூத்துன்ற வார்த்தைங்க வரும்போது அங்கதான் தமிழ்ல என்ன சொல்றாங்கன்னா, கூத்துன்னு சொன்னாலே உடனே அது மட்டமா இருக்குதுன்ற மாதிரி. இப்போ அதனால தான் எங்கிட்ட படிச்ச பிள்ளைங்கள்லாம் கூட கூத்து நல்லா பண்ற பிள்ளைங்கள்லாம் கூட கூத்து விட்டுட்டு வேற எதுக்குன்னா போயிடலாமா, வேலைக்கு போயிட்டா நல்லா அப்படி.
அதனால கூத்து ஸ்டைல்லையே சொல்றேன்னா, நன்றி நன்றி நன்றி
என்று சொல்வோம். நன்றி,
மிக்க மிக்க நன்றி, உங்கள் இருவருக்கும் மிக்க மிக்க நன்றி. ராஜகோபால் ஹன்னே ரெண்டு பேருக்கும் நன்றி நன்றி நன்றி. ஓகே, ஸோ ஜாயின்டோ
உங்கள் எல்லோருக்கும் நன்றி வணக்கம். கட்டைக்குத்து சங்கத்தின் மூலமாகவும் நம்முடைய
Pickle Factory Dance Foundation. Yeah. No, I just said that. I was just saying that life itself is a kuttu. You see, and he agreed. He said, "Yeah, life is a kuttu," and that's why in kuttu style we said, let's say nandri nandri means thank you, thank you, thank you very much, and he also repeated that. So.
உறுதுணையா இருந்தாங்க. தமிழ் பிள்ளை வந்து நான் பண்ணும்போது விசர்ஜன் தமிழ்ல விடுத்தல் எழுதி கல்கட்டாவில் பண்ணிட்டு சாந்திநிகேதனிலும் பண்ணோம் 2007.
He is talking of a 2007 performance of Visarjan which they did in Calcutta when Vikram's father was organizing the Tagore festivals year after year.
Raghupati.
என்று சொன்னால் திருமுருகாளியும் வந்தெங்கில் குடியாது கொள்ளுவாள். நில் என்று சொன்னால் எதிரில் நிற்பாளே, வெல் என்று சொல்லி எதிரியை வெல்ல செய்யும் ரகுபதி நாரி ராஜ புரோகிதே ரகுபதி நாரி. காளிகாதேவிக்கு பக்தனானவன் நிலியவளை தினம் தினம் போற்றுவேன். காளிகாதேவிக்கு பக்தனானவன் நிலியவளை தினம் தினம் போற்றுவேன். சூரியகாபாலி திரு சூரிய சுந்தரியை.
Thank you very much. So on behalf of Victoria Memorial Rajagopal and Hann, as it is going to the same household, we thought we shouldn't duplicate the thing, so it goes jointly together. And thank you for giving us a glimpse of Visarjan also here. And also with that, I would like to do the Visarjan of this evening's program too. So there is some tea outside. Please carry the conversation on outside. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for very much being a part of this. Oh yeah, Vikram has one last word.
Just one last thing. You've seen glimpses of Rajagopal perform today. You have not seen the show. So 18th on the Sunday, it's at Ami Arts Festival at Robindra Tirtho. It's not too far to travel for something like this. Absolutely not. So please come. It's at 4 o'clock, 4 p.m. 4 p.m. at Robindra Tirtho. So do come.
It's not far at all, and it's both Robindra and Tirtho. So you have to go.
Yeah, the workshop is in the morning. Posters are there.
Right. Okay, thank you.